Hello class, today we're going to take a look at reviewing how we convert fractions, decimals, and percentages. So in the first question, we're given a list of percentages. We want to write their equivalent simplified fraction and their decimals. Now, all of these are pretty easy percentages to work with, but we want to use them to remind ourselves about the process that we use. This percent sign, it just has the meaning out of 100. So anytime I see that percent sign, I can just replace it with the expression out of 100 and keep the rest of it the same. So 50% is just 50 out of 100. Now, I always want to go ahead and simplify my fractions as much as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and choose to divide top and bottom here by 10, since I notice that both the top and bottom end in a 0. Tenths is my simplified fraction. And that also tells me about my decimal. 5 tenths as a fraction is a 5 in the tenths place of my decimal, which is the first place after the dot. Now I'm going to finish simplifying my fraction all the way down, so I know that both 5 and 10 still divide by 5. That gives me 1/2 as my simplified fraction. And of course my decimal here is 0.5 or 5 tenths. We're going to use the same approach for 10%. We know that percent means out of 100. So 10% is just 10 out of 100, replacing that percent sign with the out of 100. Let's go ahead and divide both top and bottom by 10 here to simplify. That's going to give me 1/10 as my simplified fraction. 1/10 is a 1 in the tenths place of my decimal. So 1 in the first position after the dot. And we can go ahead and fill in our empty place with a 0. So we've got a simplified fraction of 1/10. And a simplified decimal of 1/10 as well. Okay, for 1%, again, we're going to go ahead and replace the percent with out of 100, since those two things mean the same thing. And we're going to keep our 1 on top, so 1% is 1 out of 100. There is no simplifying I can do that fraction, so that is going to be my simplest form fraction. For my decimal here, I know that I'm going to be in the hundredths place, since I have 100 on the bottom. So I'm going to set myself up 2 places after the dot. The one that I have from the top of my fraction goes in the farthest right place, in the hundredths place in this case. Of course, I'm going to fill in my zeros into my other places. And so I get that 1/100th is 1/100th decimal. Okay. If I take a look at my 25%, again, we're going to start by replacing our percent with out of 100. So this is 25 out of 100. We go ahead and simplify. You might know that both of these do divide by 25 to simplify, and that gives us 1/4 in simplest form as our fraction. I'm also going to take this 25 out of 100. I'm going to go ahead and observe that 25 out of 100 is the same as a decimal reaching the hundredths place, so 2 places after the dot. My 5 and my 2 are my digits, and then my 0 fills in the blank space. If I look at 20%, likewise, I can go ahead and say that this is 20 out of 100. And I can go ahead and simplify. I know that both of these numbers divide by 10 since they end in a 0. So that gives me 2 tenths. 2 tenths is the decimal 0.2, okay, in the tenths position. And of course, we can further simplify this fraction one last time by dividing both of these even numbers by 2. I'll give me 1/5 as my simplified fraction. Okay. When I go ahead and look at 52%, again, we're going to start with our percent being out of 100 and our 52 being itself. 52% is 52 out of 100. I do know that my 52 over 100 is going to be reaching the hundredths place. For its decimal, we'll fill in our 2 and our 5, and empty place gets a 0. So that's going to be my decimal here, 52 hundredths. And then for my fraction, I want to simplify that, so I'm going to choose to divide both the even numbers by 2. 52 divided by 2 is 26, and 100 divided by 2 is 50. Those are still even, so I'm going to choose to divide by 2 again, and that gives me 13 over 25. And 13 is a prime number that doesn't share any common factors with 25, so that is going to be my simplest form fraction. To finish up here with my 6%, I'm going to keep my 6 as it was. My percent means out of 100, so my fraction here is 6 over 100. Since I have 100 on the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and convert that to a decimal as well. I know my decimal will reach the hundredths place, so 2 positions after the dot. The 6 will go in that position, and then any other empty places get filled with zeros. So my 600ths is 600ths as a decimal. For my fraction, I am going to simplify it by dividing top and bottom by 2, and that'll give me the simplest form, 3 over 50. Take a look at question 2. We want to start with a decimal this time and convert it to its equivalent fraction and percentage, of course showing our work. When we start with a decimal, we want to look at the farthest right place. And in all of these farthest right places here, they are in the hundredths place in all 3 of these questions. So I know that all my fractions are going to start out life over 100 since my decimals reach the hundredths place. Fill in the digits from the top without a dot as the tops. So our 75 is our digits here, 65 is our digits here. 04 is the same as just 4. So we have our 4 on top of that fraction there. Now we do always want to simplify our fractions and get our percentages. Now I have here fractions that are out of 100, so I'm going to convert each of these into a percent to begin with. I know that percent is just the same as the percent sign. Of course, that percent, I mean, is out of 100, as percent. So I'm going to start by replacing those out of 100s with a percent sign each, and then just fill in the number that wasn't out of 100. So 75% is 75 over 100, 65 over 100 is 65%, and 4 over 100 is 4%. The only thing left to do here is simplify, so we're going to go ahead and choose to divide top and bottom by 4 here to get 1 over 25 as our simplest form fraction. Here I notice both of these numbers end in a 5 or 0, so they definitely divide by 5. That'll give us 13 over 20 as our simplest form fraction in the middle there. And then I know that both 75 and 100 can divide by 25 to give us our simplest form, 3/4. We move to the back. We want to start with each fraction and write it as its equivalent decimal and percentage, and to show our work. In the case of question A, we've got 23 over 100. This already has a place value bottom, and it's already over 100 for our percent. As far as our percent goes, we know that over 100 is the same thing as our percent sign, and since it was 23 over 100, it's just 23%. Okay, for my decimal, I know that my 100 on the bottom tells me that my digits reach the hundredths place, or 2 places after the dot. I'm going to fill in my 3 and my 2, and any empty place gets a 0. So my simplified decimal, 0.23, and my percentage, 23%. Take a look at question B. I know that 3/10 is going to be a 3 in the tenths position of my decimal, so that makes my decimal 0.3 or 3/10. To get my percent, I want 100 on the bottom. So I ask myself, what do I do to 10 to make it into 100? I'm going to multiply top and bottom by 10. That's going to give me 30 over 100. Now that I have over 100, I know that over 100 is the same thing as percent. And so I'm going to keep my 30, but instead of saying over 100, I'll say 30%. Take a look at question C. I can make this fraction have a 10 on the bottom by multiplying the bottom by 2. That'll give me 10 on the bottom, which is a place value. I always have to multiply the top and bottom by the same amount to make an equivalent fraction, so 3 times 2 makes 6/10. 6/10 is the decimal with a 6 in the tenths position, the first position after the dot, and of course we'll fill in that empty place with a 0. Okay, for my percent, I want there to be 100 on the bottom, so I'm going to take my 6 over 10, I'm going to multiply top and bottom by 10, like I did in the previous question. That gives me 60 over 100, and 60 out of 100 is 60%. Again, just replacing your out of 100 with your percent sign. Okay, for our 11 out of 20, I'm going to go ahead and choose to multiply top and bottom by 5, and I'm choosing that to get 100 on the bottom. 11 times 5 on top is 55. 55 over 100 is 55 hundredths, reaching the hundredths place of my decimal. And 55 out of 100 is also 55%, replacing that out of 100 sign. Okay, finishing up, our 7 over 100 is 7 hundredths as a decimal. I can just go ahead and set up my hundredths place, being 2 spots after the dot. My 7 goes in that farthest right place, and any empty places get a 0. So this is going to be 0.07 or 7 hundredths. I can also replace my out of 100 with my percent sign and say that 7 out of 100 is 7%. Okay, finishing up, when I look at 45 over 250, I want to go ahead and make the bottom into my 10, 100, or 1,000 if I can. I do know that both 45 and 250 can divide by 5, since they both end in a 5 or 0, and that gives me 9 out of 50. Now, if I want a decimal and a percent, I can use that 50, multiply it by 2, and that'll give me 18 out of 100. The reason I've chosen that is to get my 100 on the bottom, which allows me to say that this decimal reaches the hundredths place, which is hundredths in this case. And I can also say that my 18 out of 100 is 18%. Just replace 100 with my percent sign, as we have in most of these questions. Okay. We are told that these last 4 are repeating decimals. We know for a repeating decimal, we need to take our proper fraction and get a 9 on the bottom. In the case of question A, we do already have a 9 on the bottom, which is good. Since there's 1 9 on the bottom, I know that one of my digits will repeat. And what digit is that? It's the 4 from the top. Now remember, of course, that my 0.4 repeating is 0.44444444444. You can write those 4s forever. Okay, as many 4s as we can write, and we still wouldn't get to the end of this number. It's 4s forever and ever. Amen. Okay. For 5 over 11, we again want to make some 9s on the bottom. I can't multiply 11 by anything to give me 9 itself, but I can multiply it by 9. And the reason I choose to do that is because it gives me 99 on the bottom. 5 times 9 on the top gives me 45. Since I have 2 9s on the bottom, I know that I'll have 2 digits that repeat. So 2 repeating digits in my decimal. And those decimals are 0.45 repeating from the 45 on top. And of course, we got our 0.4 repeating up here. Okay, if we take a look at 16 over 36, I personally can't think of what I can do with 36 to make 999 or 999. But I do notice that this fraction is able to simplify. So I'm going to choose to divide the top and bottom by a common factor of 4. 16 divided by 4 gives me 4, and 36 divided by 4 gives me 9. And hey, look, it's the same as question A. So of course, this is going to be 0.4 repeating. Up with my 1 over 11, we're going to go ahead and multiply top and bottom by 9 again. That'll give me 9 over 99. As my 99 on the bottom. Now, since I have 2 9s on the bottom, I know that there'll be 2 digits that repeat. Now, 9 isn't presently a 2-digit number. If I put a 0 after it, it would make it 9D, which is definitely not the same as 9. If I put a 0 before it, 09 is the same as 9, and so we can say that our 2 repeating digits are 09. Now, if we were to write out that repeating decimal, it would be 0.09, 09, 09, 09, 09, 09s forever and ever. Amen. So I hope that's helped you recall some of those skills with converting our fractions, decimals, and percentages from our grade 7 course. And we'll be using and applying these skills as we start working on percentages above 100% and as fractional percentages.